And welcome to another episode of the Motor City Metrics podcast on a Thursday evening, the first podcast of 2025. I'm Raheli. Motor City Metrics, that is. I'm Raheli. Alongside is Chris Brown and Mike, and no Uper this evening. And hopefully everything's well in the Uper household. And it's just basically everybody's sick. There's just been, there's a flu going around. There's some stomach stuff going around, and it just seems like can't avoid it. So, but hopefully Uper gets better. So you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And we want to, before we get to the podcast, I want to thank everybody who reached out to us personally on the Scott Harris interview. You can find it on our YouTube channel over at Tigers Minor League Report. Very, very positive comments, and appreciate the feedback. So if you haven't checked it out, we'll probably play some clippets here and there if you'd like to hear what Scott Harris said as we talked prospect development, because that was the angle. Some people who were saying, how come you didn't grill him about free agency and those things? Well, that wasn't the intent of the conversation. It was to talk about player development, something that he started off in, and it was a good conversation. And again, thank you to Tigers PR. Thank you for Scott Harris for being that generous at this time. You didn't have to do that. Those guys are really busy, and it was just much appreciated talking to two baseball nerds. But it was just funny because some of the responses were like, "Oh, these guys are really into the minor leagues," or some people weren't familiar with this, which is fine. It's fine. It was funny because some of them were like, "I never heard of these guys," and cool. And like, I'm not one of those people that I don't have enough swagger to go and think I'm some sort of big deal or something like that. But it was just funny. Some people, there was just the overall response was great, and that's all. I'm happy for the response. That's all I'm saying. So,
yeah, I mean, and part of the great thing of doing something like that is it does get you a new audience. People go, wait, what's this? Scott Harris is obviously going to draw a lot of eyes, so we were, very fortunate for him to do that. And like you said, like 95 to 99% of all the comments were really great. A lot of people very happy for us, like, hey, you guys are big time now. It was like, settle down. And it was Raj reached out to him, and they were receptive, so that was awesome. But there were there's always going to be a handful of people that who cares, spend money, that crowd. And and I get it. And front offices and owners do deserve to have their feet held to the fire at times, right? But we weren't going to come into this like Mike Wallace, trying to pin Scott Harris down. And we talked a little bit before. We didn't actually bring it up during the interview, but I was like, I'm just going to bring up free agents so you can say I can't talk about that, because he literally can't comment on specifics about free agents. You could say, hey, Alex Bregman's a good player. We think he's a great player. You can't say anything about contract negotiations or what a player is worth. It's in the collective bargaining agreement. So people who want to hear answers, they can't get those. And he's not going to come out and say, hey, we can't wait to cut Javi Baez. Or, you know what we're going to do? We're going to cut prices on everything. He's not going to he can't say stuff like that. He's not going to. And short of that, fans are going to be upset no matter what. So, and I guess from our perspective, like Roger's saying, it's a minor league podcast. We're focused on minor leagues and player development. And he was really generous with his time about that. You could tell he was way into it. I thought he came off as kind of thoughtful and genuine. And from our perspective, there's nothing to criticize about the player development system right now. That's a team that made the playoffs with one of the youngest, if not the youngest roster in the big leagues. They had the best winning percentage in the minor leagues, and they've got a top 5 farm system. What are we going to yell at Scott Harris about right now regarding the minors? So again, most of the comments were positive, and I just, want to address some of the people who are negative about it and saying we should have done more with big league stuff. It wasn't really the purpose of it.
I mean, he's getting 100 of those kinds of questions from everybody, and he's given the same answers anyway. So it's like, you guys asking those questions was not going to unearth any new information. I think it would honestly have been a waste of your guys' time. So I think that instead of doing that, you guys did the right thing and actually got something interesting out of Scott Harris, Yeah,
I appreciate that. It's like he's at the season end press conference or whatever with the beat writers and stuff, there somebody specifically asked him if they were going to spend money, and he said they're going to spend. Yes, there'll be money to spend, and they're going to try to make the team better. He wouldn't have said anything more than that to us.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And to me, just the fact that he was able to just do it in the first place, like for us, I mean, we had Ryan Garko on last year, and he made some point, and there was a comment about, well, he didn't say I a lot, he said we, and he was talking about the whole staff as a collective, and I don't know, it was even afterwards we spent, I think, almost an hour with him, and that was more than I expected, and so it was just, the goal for us was to establish, just to kind of, for us, we've established a relationship already with West Michigan, with Erie, to a certain extent Toledo, Lakeland, but with the big league team, I'm down there quite often. Chris is going to be down there more often as well. I mean, we've been talking Tigers now for technically a decade, so it's just a matter of just bridging the gap with the big league team. And it was a really cool opportunity, and we look forward to. We've had players on. We've had minor league players on before, and we got a chance to talk to Malloy during the playoffs. Same thing with Cole Keith. And you hear about Cole Keith's mom buying all those baseball cards. It's a cool story.
That was a fun story. Yeah,
it is a fun story, but it's just one of those things where the only question Deadly Ninja Beast wants to know: was there any questions you wish you would have asked him after the fact? I think the only one I would have asked him. I would have asked him probably one more about the draft process, as far as like, there was a draft question that I had saved aside about late, or maybe even probably something to do with like late round draft picks or the international side of things a little bit more, because I forgot two things. One, they're finishing up the facility down in Lakeland, and two, they're also finishing up the other facility in the Dominican Republic. So asking a status update about that and seeing how that's going along. Because one of the things that Garko told us last year that one of his correspondents with Scott Harris was getting Montero translation stuff that you think would be something that was done on the old regime under Al Avila, and it wasn't. And so just those little things like that. And there was another thing too. Somebody was in the comment section on YouTube. Well, this is all Al Avila's guys, but they didn't develop under Al Avila, is my point.
Yeah, I mean, and not all Al Avila's guys too, right? Like Lorenzo had nothing to do with Al Avila. Sweeney had nothing to do with Al Avila. These guys, all these guys got better over the last few years. I could have asked and would have enjoyed hearing his perspective on every single prospect, like all the top 30 prospects. I would have asked him, like, what about this guy and this guy? And I would have loved to hear that. The only two things that I wanted to ask or thought about asking beforehand that it just didn't work the way the conversation kind of went was I did want to try to get some clarification. And this is kind of just for you. The idea that, he's talked about, Spencer Torkelson has a good offseason and a good spring training that he'll still play a part in the team. And I think we can all imagine what a good spring training is, but I was hoping he could give us some clarification about what a good offseason is for Torkelson. But just didn't come up. And then the other thing is
our top 30. Remember in the email, they're like, we might not agree with all your top 31 lists. And so I'm like,
yeah. Well, and then the other, just kind of curious where, he's the president of baseball operations, where that ends and where like facilities begins. Like how much does he have? People keep talking about those luxury seats. Like, does he have anything to do with that at all? Like, I know when they brought him in, he was part of the process of moving in the fence. But I don't know how much of that is him and how much of that, like, where, like, basically that was it. Like, where does your job end and where does somebody else's begin? But, like I said, those parts just didn't come up naturally and I didn't want to shove them in there. So,
yeah. The Jobe thing was probably the best part, because that was one of those it's now officially it's part of the soundboard.
I think he's gonna be just fine.
So yeah. I and the thing about that is we try to be a little bit more conversational on the podcast, right? Like I understand in TV or in radio or something, somebody might just be like, does Jackson Jobe get enough swings and misses? But I wanted to try to explain where I was coming from with that. And so it leads to like a 45-second question. And I know that bothers some people, but I think that's just kind of our style, right? Like we want to kind of have people understand where we're coming from. But yeah, that was a fun moment of levity there at the end.
Yeah, Griff, Griff, by the way, who subbed in for Mike last week. Thank you, Griff, for the comment here. He says, in a sea of endless interviews where he asks same questions over and over, I think he was really appreciated the unique questions you guys asked, the ability just to be a nerd about baseball for a bit. And that was the goal, because anytime we have anybody on, we wanted to have a conversation. Like, if you, like, for example, one of the first conversations I had with you, Mike, was about the Cardinals and your obsession with the Cardinals, and just how many times we talked about in the road show, our old podcast, a little bit about baseball, just these nerdy conversations, or not nerdy conversations, screw it, just conversations about sports. And just, we want to have anybody talk who goes on the show. That's the goal, is that we, like, for example, when we hung out Gabe Alvarez in Erie, and then like his meticulous way of how he has his shoes organized, and then hearing how like him and Aaron Boone are in a group chat about, they just texted about baseball and USC football, stuff like that. That's, or Lance Parrish. One of my favorite conversations of all time is talking to Lance Parrish, hear him talk about how the Tigers made him bat left-handed. And we could have talked to him. I mean, he's sitting there, he's got a little beer there. I mean, you know, he's got his putting his information with Caesar, and he's sitting there talking to us about stories. Like, to me, that's the cool stuff right there. That's where, you know, he doesn't want to talk about the 84 Tigers. I mean, he wants to talk about anything but that. Like, I'm sure he's, you know, it's like, oh, how's it battle with Alan Trammell and Lou? It's like, no, dude, like, for you, like, you know, like, just there's even in the times I've talked to Jim Leland down in Lakeland, I've talked to him twice. And I mean, it's one story I can't see on air, but it was just it's cool. Like, it's just a cool thing, just because for me, it's just like, I already know that stuff. That's cool. But I want to know more about, like, how life was in the minor leagues, or, you managed back-to-back championships in Lakeland. How was that? Like, just that stuff is cool. But anyway.
Yeah, we say it, like, you know, what we found over the years is that baseball people just kind of like to talk baseball. And that's in person, that's on podcasts, that's anybody in the chat, right? Anybody on Discord, anybody that, you know, players who played 20 years in the big leagues. Like, they do that because they love baseball, and they're generally happy to talk to you about baseball. And it's fun to learn about other things about people too, but sometimes you just want to sit and talk ball.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So speaking of talking ball, the Tigers agree with the arbitration eligible players on 1-year contracts for the 2025 season. And Tigers PR just tweeted this out. So just share the screen for the sake of having the numbers right there for anybody who's watching us live on YouTube. But for everybody listening at home, Bo Brisky, Jason Foley, Casey Mize, Jake Rogers, Eric Skubal, getting a big raise, Will Vest, and Matt Verling. So Matt Verling at $3 million, Will Vest $1.4 million, Eric Skubal 10.1. Is that a better way? 10.15 million. Jake Rogers 2.64 million. Casey Mize 2.34 million. Jason Foley 3.15 million, and Brisky getting just over $1 million raise. So there we go.
Yeah, nothing. It was good to see there was no no shenanigans this year, and even when there were last year with Casey Mize, it was ultimately kind of settled quickly, but it doesn't mean a whole lot. It's just now we have a better idea of their payroll.
Yeah. And again, with the all quiet on the Alex Bregman front, the interesting thing that came out today was John Morosi, the Pope, if you will, came out with the story that it was mentioned in the I think it was tweeted out that basically the Nolan Arenado saga continues, where he's reportedly less likely to be traded. But there's two teams that come up again, the Mariners and Tigers, because I guess he's more willing to open his no trade clause. I thought it'd be perhaps a foregone conclusion and go to Boston, but there'd be a lot of stuff it'd be a lot of moving parts for Boston for that to happen. And so speaking of, before I forget, check out the great article by Chris over at Tigers Minor League Report on Alex Bregman and the some of the comparisons he did there. We were talking about before he did the article of Ron Say, because Ron Say comes up there. It's just a weird.
Yeah.
It was the career war. Ron Say is pretty impressive. But so it was a good article by MLB Trade Rumors, kind of summing up the whole thing. the Cardinals still haven't moved Eric Fetty or Steven Matz. I mean, there's like this. They really haven't done a lot of movement too, so I'm not sure what is going to happen on that front. But I don't know if there's any smoke to the fire for him coming out to Detroit. I really think that Arenado doesn't end up here at all.
Yeah, Mike, what do you? I mean, we've talked about Arenado a bunch. I know that as a Cardinals person, I'd like to hear your perspective on this.
I mean, Nolan Arenado would be great as a third base. Like, if this team was further along offensively, the Tigers, he'd be the perfect fit. He's a great lockdown third baseman. Like, it's something they clearly need, a guy on that side of the infield to play solid defense. But the problem is the Tigers are looking for right-handers with power, and you're not going to get power out of Nolan Arenado. So it's just what I can't wrap my head around is why it seems like they're so interested in him when Harris talks about player development. It seems like the only thing he would do is, I mean, he plays good third base, but he'd literally just be taking at bats away from someone else while not helping the team offensively. Ultimately, I just don't think it wouldn't move the needle for the team at all for me. I don't think adding him would make them any better. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think that I don't think they're even a win better with Nolan Arenado.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found that whenever these things come out, and Morosi is kind of one of the more, I don't want to say egregious, but more prodigious purveyors of this sort of thing. It always feels a little bit like there's some service to the agents, or there's something, he's trying to get things moving, right? You're trying to put things out in the public to put pressure on someone, either a player or a team. Because, Bregman, or not Bregman, Arenado, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Less than that? Nixed a trade to the Astros, right? Just said he didn't want to go there, which is his right. He has a no trade clause. And then so now apparently he's and I think Morosi said this, that he's relaxed his stance on that in the last 24 hours. And it's like I think I read that as him going, like, he doesn't want to be in St. Louis. We kind of knew that, or he wants to get out of there now because of where they're headed. And
mega doo-doo.
And maybe he overplayed his hand a little bit, thought he was a little bit more valuable than he realized. And so maybe he is more open to these other teams, but it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't make a ton of sense for the Tigers because, he put up about the same production as Vierling last year, and Vierling's $20 million cheaper.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like a ton, like a sort of Tigers move. Like, the glove would be great. But yeah, it just doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
I mean, that's just the truth, dog.
That's gonna be a new one. Just dropping rotation quite a bit.
I mean, that's just the truth, dog.
It doesn't. I mean, I look. I know what Corey says right here that Bregman might end up Toronto, needed to spend the money on somebody. What's even stranger, even the Anthony, the rumors of
Santander
that the Toronto offered him a contract and then nothing. It's gone radio silent. And so I don't know, maybe because of arbitration tracker or everything that's going on right now, that's been, I mean, here's the thing, like what we're seeing here, we're seeing two things this offseason that we don't see very often. The A's are making the headlines, but not in an embarrassing way. Here's the the A's. Sorry, I can't call them the Oakland A's anymore. It's the A's. Anyway, they announced a 5-year contract extension. An extension with DH Brent Rooker. So that included a club vesting option for 2030 is guaranteed $60 million. I mean, we're talking about a team that doesn't barely spend that kind of money. Sorry, the Sacramento A's, Corey. I don't think they want to go by the Sacramento A's. I think they're just going to go. Yeah, they're just going by the A's. Although I do want to call them Sacramento. Screw it. Just call them Sacramento A's.
Yeah, their designation is ATH now instead of OAK.
ATH?
Yes.
Yeah, for the Athletics.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, so yeah, there's I like old BK's line here. They have several headlines and none of them involve a possum. But yeah, I that's another one right there. Jock Peterson for that price. He is very undervalued. He does receive a $10 million signing bonus. Another thing that you would never hear about Oakland doing, giving signing bonuses. Whoa. They're flush with cash. They're not spending on stadiums because they're having taxpayer dollars do it, and that's fine. But I mean, the A's have this is the first A's player to sign a 5-year deal since Trevor Cahill in 2011. And it's the second investment for $60 million this winter when they added Luis Severino on a 3-year, $67 million, which represented the largest contract in A's history. So that has been another headline. The Dodgers signing everybody. That's just the way of the nature of the beast. The other one is the Royals re-signing Michael Lorenz. And I mean, that the Royals have been spending, so that's kind of maybe a regular thing. But Justin Verlander, going to another team that's the color orange, San Francisco Giants, on a 1-year deal. There was a great meme that said, "I love large breasts, color orange, and Taco Bell," and it was Justin Verlander's quote. I'm not sure how real that was, but anyway, that was just it's a funny meme. I gotta find a Discord. It made for a funny exchange yesterday. But go ahead, Chris.
Well, yeah, no, the Verlander thing is interesting. It didn't seem to me like the last time Verlander was a free agent, we were both over at Fansided, and so it seemed like we were really pumping out Verlander articles. Like, oh, will he come? Does Verlander fit? I didn't see a lot of people wanting Verlander to come back now. I think some people, when he signed for $15 million, some people were naturally saying, "Oh, we should have given him that than Alex Cobb." But then you look, and a lot of the projections have Alex Cobb being better next year. Some of that is, there's just not a whole lot of comparables for Verlander, pitching at 42. But that should be an interesting spot for him. And who knows? Maybe he still will come back one day. But I feel like a lot of people are like, whatever. Move on. Scooble's the new Verlander. Let's see. As for, Don mentioned Jock Peterson there. I think the Tigers already have him in Kerry Carpenter. Like, Peterson never plays against left-handed pitching, and he hits power, and he's kind of a corner outfielder. I think this is not necessarily what they need right now. Power would be great, but he doesn't. It's just another lefty bat.
There was a different podcast that said that give him more opportunities against left-handed bats based off his minor league numbers. Chris Casanelli posted that podcast, and I wish I remember what the podcast was, but that he needs more regular at bats against lefties, and I don't know about that. If he could hit lefties on a regular basis, he would be. I don't know. I thought that was an interesting debate because
I think
that minor league numbers. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's because he's never even been allowed to really face left-handed pitching in the majors. I think that's what it is. I don't disagree with that. I feel like he hasn't even gotten a chance to prove that he's like an everyday player. It's just, nope, you're not playing against lefties. I understand why people feel that way. I can't really say if mine's not coming from a place of bias, though, because Kerry Carpenter is one of my favorite players. So I don't really know if I'm just like, oh, I just want to see him play more. But I get I understand the argument.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that there you go. I only like 3 things: Taco Bell, a nice set of knockers, and the color orange. Justin Verlander on joining the Giants, probably. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we don't consider as much now is the kind of advanced technology that these teams have. And I know people have seen it, these pitching machines that basically mimic the delivery, the timing. There's a big video screen and the ball comes out the exact same arm slot, the same spin rate, the same velocity of the actual pitchers, because all that data is available now. I think there's probably a great likelihood that the Tigers have done a ton of work with Kerry Carpenter facing left-handed pitching and things like that, and they realize that it's just not going to work. They'll still play him against lefties occasionally, I think, but there has to be a reason behind it, right? Like, they played Colt Keith against plenty of left-handed pitching, and Sweeney got to face some left-handed pitching, and Green does all the time. It's not like they're afraid of it, or it's like a team policy. So I think there's a reason. The Tigers usually don't do things without a good reason now, at least under AJ Hinch. So, it would be fun if Carpenter could play every day, but if you're a left-handed bat, you're still getting 450, 500 at bats a year. You're going to face lefties 100, 120 plate appearances. So it's not that big of a deal. And he's crushing right-handers. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it was the just thanks Dan. By the way, it was the Just Baseball podcast. The guys over there, Clay and Adam over there, they do a really good job with that website over there. I think Trevor still works over there too. But yeah, that was the pod. I don't know. Yeah, if it is what it is, I mean, if they really believe that he could hit lefties, they would have probably gave him an opportunity because he does have all that power. But it is what it is. I mean, but again, we're talking about getting production from a 19th round draft pick here. So
yeah, no, that's one of those, like, there are players like Peter Peterson is a good hitter and is a quality player. It's just one of those things where he doesn't necessarily fit the team right now. Other teams, I'm sure he fits great. That's why he's on the Rangers, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. We talked like a lot of the free agency has just kind of stalled out right now, and I don't know if it's just New Year hangover or if things are kind of swirling around and they're waiting for one domino to fall and then everything else is going to fall. I just saw Hector Gomez just reported that the Blue Jays plan to make a second contract extension offer to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which will be very close to what the player is looking for. Now, I contend that if the Blue Jays lock up Vlad Jr., then suddenly they become a much more viable landing spot for Bregman and Santander, just because I think I'd be more comfortable saying, like, okay, that I'm not going to be the only guy here. There's going to be some future here. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. If I'm Vlad, maybe I want to get to free agency and try to get that Juan Soto money. I don't think he's going to get that much, but he's going to get paid. He got $28 million in arbitration today.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think Toronto's not going to. I really don't think Toronto's trying to tear it down and rebuild it. I think they're going to keep doing what they do to keep themselves competitive. I know that there was a report that Bo Bichette said he was going to be gone after next year, after his free agency. So that doesn't bode well. But however, I think that if they can lock in a junior, I think they can still remain competitive. They have a decent farm system. It's not top shelf like it used to be, but they're not as top heavy there. But and Corey right on the money. He says that he seems like the whole free agent market is waiting for rookie to sign. And that probably is correct. I mean, that's a very strong observation, because you look at today's the 9th of January. We have, as Kevin said, 35 days, 11 hours till pitchers and catchers report. And here we are with, I mean, the reliever market is still not that. I mean, it hasn't really moved that much either. So
yeah, hardly at all.
Yeah. And the trade, like I said, we've mentioned this numerous times. I feel like I've mentioned this every podcast the last 3 weeks. Cardinals haven't done anything. Mariners haven't done anything. And those are two teams that need to do something with their payroll. So,
and the Mariners were the other team mentioned by Morosi, right? And possibly in on Arenado.
Correct.
Which that's another one that kind of makes sense. They probably need more power and right-handed bat, but yeah, they need a third baseman. So, it does feel like I think that's a good point. And once the Sasaki domino falls, I think the pitching should clear itself out at least. Like, I think we'll see Flaherty sign shortly thereafter, because you haven't heard a lot of movement on him, and he's kind of the best pitcher available. So, I don't know. I do think things are going to get a pickup here in the next week or so.
Yeah, I really think the Tigers are really, in terms of reliever market, I think they're going to be looking at a couple arms. I think that they still need a swing and miss guy out of the bullpen if they're not going to rely on going to the farm system. So if they don't think that Flores is ready, or whomever they might have in mind back there, I think that they're still going to be I think they're going to pick out a reliever. To what reliever? I don't know yet. We'll see. But I mean, there's been tied to all sorts of them. So, Tanner Scott's a good idea, but yeah, the Mets are going to just make it rain. So we'll see what happens there. It is, by the way, it was interesting stat too that Jerry tweeted out this earlier, that only Jake Arrieta had made more in their second arbitration case as a starting pitcher than Derek Skubal.
So yeah, like a bigger leap from year 1 to year 2. I think it was, because Skubal got like $2.5 million, 2.3 last year, and it's up to $10 million this year. And yeah, I mean that'll happen when you win the Cy Young Award. He's going to get paid again next year. Yeah, and that just leads to another round of when do you trade him? Do you trade him? Those discussions, which we're gonna go over probably another 30 times before all is said and done. Yeah, I kind of think that it's either going to be he's either going to be traded after this season, or they're just going to keep him and make a run in 2026 and take the compensation pick. And I really think it depends on how well they do this year. Like if they make a legit run this year and they feel like real World Series contenders, then I think you have to keep them, right? But if things don't work out this year, and it's, things could go either way this season. If they all stay healthy and the young players take a leap, the Tigers could be a real contender. But how often do teams completely stay healthy like that? It's probably unlikely. So, but yeah, like I said, we'll have plenty of time to talk about Skubal later.
Yeah, and I mean, this year's already off to a weird start as it stands. I mean, LA is on fire right now. Dallas got snow. El Paso, like I have a friend of mine who works remotely, and she was telling me there was snow, and it's like 20 to 4 degrees out there, and like everybody on the roads were losing their minds. Meanwhile, it's just like ho hum here because it's just bitterly cold. And so it is a strange, and the Lions are the number 1 seed and have a bye. Detroit Lions are a football team that you could ride or die for right now. And here we are. And these times they came out and whooped Minnesota's ass last Sunday convincingly. And Aaron Glenn somehow just with all those injuries. I mean, this is a Tigers podcast, but I mean, tip of the cap to the Lions getting it done and just manhandling the Vikings. And then just a strange thing to the Viking fans. Lion fans are so mean. They've been harassing us. And
that is something funny that I've never been like a hardcore NFL person, so I don't know which fan bases are the worst, other than I assume the Raiders. The Vikings fans just seem to hate Lions, and it's particularly Kirby Joseph. I think because he hit TJ Hawkinson and hurt him once, and they just think he's the dirtiest player on the planet. And I don't know, maybe that he's got that reputation. He got left out of the Pro Bowl. He wasn't an All-Pro despite leading the league in interceptions. So I don't know what's going on there, but I also don't care. Just win.
Yeah, just win. And Hawkinson said that he didn't blame Joseph for the injury at all. And the Pistons already have more wins than they did last year. And the Pistons are over 500 I don't know if they're winning against Golden State tonight.
They were down
4
by
seconds left. They're down by 3. I've got it up right now.
Okay.
They made a nice comeback, but I think it's a little too late.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I saw Jared Goff. The Lions have a bye, so Jared Goff is at the auto show today, which is kind of funny.
Weird.
But
did you guys see that MLB put out a story? Will Leach that picked 2025 the Dodgers over the Tigers in the World Series.
I did see that.
You guys want to talk about that a little bit?
They predicted like the next 5 or 10 World Series, right? Yeah, it's one of those fun things to think about, and you could see it. Like I said, if the young players take a step forward, and if they sign Bregman, and the young players take a step forward, that's it. Yeah, and then they're a real contender. They were 1 game away from the ALCS last year. Obviously, we talked over and over again about how it was kind of fluky and unusual, but they're a team on the rise, I think. So it's fun. There have been a lot of things like they've been doing top 10 players at each position, and Tyler Holton didn't get mentioned as a reliever. I think Mike Petriello. Mike Petriello did the list for relievers, and everybody's like, "Where's Tyler Holton?" And I just wonder if Petriello was like, "I forgot him." Oh well. But yeah, Jackson Jobe was voted, I think, the top pitching prospect in a lot of places, and it's that time of year. There's also the little things to chat about, but I don't know. I'd be down for the Tigers going to the World Series. Maybe not against the Dodgers so much, but got to beat good teams to win it all. So.
Yeah, I mean, other teams in the American League have gotten better. The Yankees have significantly gotten better with Devin Williams, which I forgot almost he was over there too. So the Cubs have had a really good offseason too. The only team, like I said, every team's gotten, well, not every team, but just there's been a good majority of the teams in the American League that have spent wisely. I mean, even the Angels too, but Josh, are we going to trade for a player? I think there's going to be a trade. I still think that's been my going conspiracy since the offseason, before the offseason began. I really think there has to be some sort of a trade to happen based off the bottleneck of players they have right now. The Yankees, the reason why I think the Yankees got better, Corey, is because I think they focus more on their pitching staff. Their offense is not, you're right, they're not scared with Soto, but I think they're not done yet. I think the Yankees might make one more move to kind of add another hitter to their lineup. So there's been rumors about them shopping Oswald Cabrera.
Yeah,
something to that effect. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it has been, like I said, it is a weird time of year right now. For this kind of movement. So Kevin wants to know over and under 90 innings for Jobe in Detroit this year.
I mean, I think that they probably want him to go 125, 130. I'll say over on that. But you have to kind of have the caution that he hasn't thrown over 100 innings in any season yet in pro ball. That's one of the things you worry about there a little bit is injury. But I think they'll give him every chance to pitch every fifth day or so. They'll be judicious early in the year. They'll skip his start every now and then so they can watch his innings. But I think he's going to be in the rotation to start the year.
I think that's the intention for sure. I think that as long as you take everything else out of it, if they have their choice, you're right. It's going to be like 120 innings. So barring injuries or anything else like that, I definitely go over.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, maybe just like 100, 110. Just keep it like that, and then maybe what they'll do is if there's a day they can skip a start or two, they will, and just keep them fresh. I mean, they're gonna go 7 or 8 deep, if not more. So, there's definitely a case where I just don't. The way even Harris joked about it during the podcast, I think they expect Jobe to be in the rotation. Does he have I don't see him going back. I don't see him starting the year in Toledo. Right now I don't see that. It could be any. I don't know. Go ahead, Chris.
I don't either. I mean, I think you've talked about it on the pod last week when I wasn't here. And by the way, yes, I was at Sonic 3 with my son and my nieces and nephews and my brother. It was fun. I did not go see the Bob Dylan biopic. Who you people think I am? Although I hear it's good, but I don't care about Bob Dylan at all. I forgot what I was talking about. I went off on a rant. What were we talking about?
I don't know. We're talking about the art. Sonny, what you said last week.
Oh yeah. No, I forgot. I still forgot.
Corey thought you were going to see Nosferatu.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind that.
Jobe. We're talking about Jobe.
Yeah.
About the location.
Yeah. You guys go ahead. I completely lost I drove myself right off the train tracks.
All right. Well, no, I think that the idea of the rotation being that Montero take a step forward, Jobe. Do you now remember, Chris?
Yeah, I got it. Sorry. No, Yoop was talking about getting the extra year. He doesn't really care, he values the extra year more than the potential draft pick. And I think they may try that, but they already brought him up. And honestly, I don't know if they're going to play games with that. You bring him up, he's got a good chance to win the Rookie of the Year. And if not, you finish in the voting for Cy Young over the next 3 seasons, I think it is, then you still get a pick. So it's like there's still a lot of incentive to bring him up and have him on the big league roster all year. Maybe not as much incentive as there is to have that extra team control, but I don't know if that matters as much with pitching. Pitching is so volatile. You just kind of want to use these guys when you can.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? The term we have is wasting bullets.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to waste bullets on that. And the Tigers have every, they should. I mean, it's just with sort of Gibson Long too coming back. There's some opportunities there. Let's not. Forgot Penn State and Notre Dame. I can't believe I'm actually saying this. That Penn State and Notre Dame are playing in a college football semifinal.
One of them has to go to the final. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Two teams
Midwest football though. We're cheering for Midwest like they do in the SEC, right? SEC.
No.
Um,
No.
I don't. Yeah. No, I mean, it's been an interesting college football tournament for the first year. It's like there weren't very many good teams this year. It seems like, and then Ohio State just kind of looks unstoppable right now. But
No, they found out what happens when you give a team 36 days off or something. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, Oregon had some trouble there, but yeah, I don't know. I think Jobe will hit that 100 plus inning mark. I was actually thinking earlier about Alex Cobb, thinking about our over unders for next year, and I was like, over under probably 15 starts, which is somewhere around 75 innings or so, which maybe is not ideal. You get 1 million per start, but if he pitches the way he's capable, then he's pretty good. And we'll see. That one of the interesting subjects with that is he's kind of a very heavy ground ball pitcher. And with Keith at first and Torres at second and possibly Young at third, you're looking at maybe one of the, we don't know how Cole Keith is going to be at first base, but I doubt he's going to be a Gold Glover instantly, right? Like they may have one of the worst infield defenses in baseball next year. So I don't know. I don't, despite Lynn Henning really pushing and wanting Jace Young to get a chance at third base, I don't think they can do that heading into the year.
I agree. That can't be the plan. I'm going to be so disappointed if that is the plan right now, honestly. And it could not be the plan, and then they could lose out on the guys they want. Bregman could want too much money. Arenado, they just don't see him as a fit or something like that. So it could happen because if they tried and they failed, but I'd be way more disappointed to think that is what they want going into the season. I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, the worst possible outcome is that Young kind of pulls a torque. That not that he's so bad that he can't do it, and not that he's obviously it'd be great if he's good and he performs, but I'd worry that he's just kind of mediocre, and you spend 3 years trying to figure out what you have there, and it just feels like wasted time when get a legitimate all-star third baseman. You can move Young back to second base where he's going to be more comfortable and where he's better. Then after Gleyber Torres plays a season here or whatever happens, then you can, Young could be your second baseman. Yuli could be your second baseman. McGonigal be your second baseman. Like, I don't know. I don't see any reason to kind of wedge Jace Young in there. He doesn't strike me as that important of a prospect to the team.
In that regard, I mean,
even though he's like a top 100 prospect, but it just doesn't feel like you need to reconfigure your future around him, if that makes sense. Like I think he's got a ceiling as an average big leaguer.
I think what's going to happen is that whatever they decide to do at third base is going to have to be an upgrade, because you could even, and as Corey points out too, you could use Torres as a chip at a trade deadline and get something else younger for your long term. Look, if there's any breaking news, Josh, I tell you right now, but there's nothing going on. There literally is nothing going on. So it is what it is. But I think that the Tigers pride themselves on defense. So I think they're going to continue to upgrade their defense. I mean, if there's one thing that Hinch did last year, I mean, the team defense over the last several seasons has been night and day, comparatively speaking, during the Ron Gardenhire era. I mean, it is weird though. However, Willie Castro is a completely different defender in Minnesota than he was here. That's the weird, to me. That's always,
yeah. I mean, he was just kind of a casualty of the transition, right? He and Candelario, they both left that first year when Harris came in, and they didn't have a strong evaluation of either of those guys, and they've gone on to do some things. So Candelario had another down year, but no, I don't know. Good. I feel happy for Willie Castro. I always kind of liked him just because he could do some things. But it is interesting seeing him get significantly better in another organization. It's kind of a bummer. It does remind you of the Avila days, though, right? Or the even some Dabrowski days. Remember, the Chad Greens of the world and guys, pitchers who would go to a different organization and suddenly throwing 4 miles an hour harder. And you're like, what the hell happened? But I don't know. Like I said, happy for Willie, and Tigers will figure something out.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it is like I said, it is now January. It's January 9th, and maybe on the next podcast we'll definitely have some sort of discussion about it. We'll see though. I mean,
Yeah, I think somebody earlier said, they're so tired of like waiting for Alex Bregman and looking at Bregman headlines that they, just kind of stop looking at him because they don't want to get their hopes up. And it just seems like a natural fit. And that was kind of the idea behind the article that I wrote. And I was just playing around with some stats first, and mostly it's just an excuse to kind of remember some guys. And I was just looking for players who were most similar to Bregman to see if we could project what he's going to be in the future. And it's a little bit all over the board, but I was mostly shocked at the number of Hall of Famers, that Bregman's numbers are similar to through this point in his career. Like I guess in my head, I just kind of always think of Hall of Famers as establishing himself very early, and it's like it's obvious. But I forget, a lot of these guys became Hall of Famers because they stayed good into their 30s, which is pretty rare. And you can't really count on it, and that's the tough point or tough part with someone like Bregman, right? He could stay a very good player in his 30s, like Paul Molitor did, or Ryan Sandberg got really good in his early 30s. But sometimes there's a guy like Longoria. Evan Longoria was awesome up until he was 30, and then just went away. And same with like Nomar Garciaparra. It's really tough, and the teams need to have all the health histories and biomechanical data and stuff like that. But just it was just kind of fun to go through and look at that compared to, I think it was 45 different players that seemed kind of Bregman like. And the one who was most similar to him by WAR and OPS plus was Tony Gwynn, which I don't think of as a Bregman type of player, but through 9 seasons they were the most similar. So it was fun.
That's a stat here by Robert James. I'm not trying to figure out about Bregman. I really want him, but if they do miss out on him, but they get Kim. And strangely, they were 9th in MLB production at third base, 3.7 F4, even though Gio got most of the plate appearances. So,
yeah, and in many ways, Ha-Seong Kim fits the profile of the team a little bit more. He's more versatile defensively. Not to say I think Bregman could play second base and could probably fill in a shortstop still. He played shortstop before, but Kim would probably be better there. And he's faster. He doesn't hit for much power, right? Like he is pretty weak comparatively. So that's where it doesn't fit. But I could definitely see the Tigers front office saying, do we want to spend $170 million on 6 years of Alex Bregman, or do we want to spend, $40 million on 2 or 3 years of Ha-Seong Kim? And I don't know. That's a worthy question to ask.
Yeah, I mean, he's been talk about him moving, or Seattle's been interested in him as well. We'll see. But I mean, when you're looking at the transactions list, and it's been like just Matt Manning changes number 15.
That's because of Torres, right?
Yeah, I believe that's
Torres came in and took his number.
I was like, yeah, I call, yeah. There we go. But Dietrich Enos and Troy Watson. I mean, and the Tigers lost Bailey Horn from the Cardinals, so it's just like I said, it's just one of those, And I do like what Corey said here about Bregman. It's a par factor. He does bat very well against other teams in the division. Over 300. I think over every other team in the division. They're in different ballparks, but.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that, and I get it, right? Like everybody talks about Houston and the Crawford boxes being, so close and ideal for his bat path and his swing, but he's a good hitter. He's a good offensive player. He's got more home runs and a higher slugging on the road in his career than at home. I think that maybe is a little bit overblown, but who knows? Comerica has done in some great hitters in the past. I don't. But I think Bregman got his first hit in Detroit off Mike Pelfrey, so maybe it's a very special place to him. Who knows?
Yeah, and Jed, I agree with you. I thought there'd be a little bit more, some smaller actions by now, but no, but it was even, like I said, even it was when the third base question too. Somebody even noticed that I guess that Harris looked like he was swallowing like a canary swallowing a cat. I didn't notice anything different, so I don't know. Yeah,
I didn't. I wasn't staring at him to see if there were any tells on his face. Like, we talked, like we said, we talked a little bit before and after, and we didn't really touch on that. But he's not going to give anything away on a podcast with a couple of minor league galoots.
I mean, that's just the truth, dog.
There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, who will the Tigers trade?
Who will the Tigers trade, Josh? I mean, honestly, like it could go either. I mean, the Tigers have been rather conservative with trading prospects, so that's where
Trades in general.
Yeah, trades in general. Period.
It hasn't been a huge tool in Scott Harris's belt, really, trading for players. You know, they've done it at the deadline the last 2 years, and they've made some small trades before. You know, they traded for Malloy, traded for Vierling and Maitan, traded for McKinstry, but and Canna, just you know, I don't know if that's his preferred method of acquiring players. I think he really likes to scour those waiver wires and get a guy that they think they can fix. And you know, sometimes it works out great. Tyler Holton, that was a waiver claim, right? And Edwin Uceta was a waiver claim they couldn't keep, and he was absolutely dominant last year for Tampa. And it's like, oh man, you know, you wish they could have held on to that, but I don't know. I always bring up Young as the guy that seems like a player they could trade, but who knows if they like him or if they want to move him.
Yeah, and everybody brings up trading Torkelson, but Torkelson has virtually no value right now, so it's not like you're going to get anything for somebody like that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the likely. It's funny this time of year where you'll see some websites. I can say what websites, sites that we used to work at, will try to come up with trade scenarios that just make no sense. And you know, we have written those articles here at Tiger Mining Report. But we always try to, like, I remember some of the, like, they wouldn't trade. That seems like an underwhelming trade. Well, that's the point. Because, I mean, if we want, you know, Spencer Torkelson for Steven Matz, that's not going to happen. Crazier things have happened, but it's just, you try to leave, like, we do this for so long and you look at the numbers and everything. It's just, you got to look in some realm of like, if fans got their way, if people got the way they wanted to trade, I mean, baseball, it'd be like when you're running a team in the show or whatever video game you play. You know, like you're going to force the trade, gonna make it go through. So I don't know. Yeah. We'll see what happens here. I mean, I think that, like, I think Corey had probably the best comment of the night, which was basically when Roki signs, I think the rest of the market will follow. That's going to be the next big domino of the fall, because I think he's supposed to start responding next week, I believe.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have 45 days, or is it 30 days from when you declare or post yourself or however it works. And the 15th is the day you can officially sign for next year's class. So I think it's going to be in the next week to 10 days. Yeah. There were those, the tweets about he has met with at least one mystery team. What's the point of that? What do you do? Like, oh, what are you trying to accomplish by being a mystery team? I don't get it. But you can cross your fingers that it's the Tigers. I remain skeptical that Detroit is the place he wants to play, but we'll see. That would certainly make for an enjoyable offseason. Although I do have a sneaky suspicion that he might end up being a reliever, but whatever.
I think the Cubs might come out of nowhere and do it just like they did last year.
Mm-hmm. No, it'll be fun to see where he lands, but
yeah. Kenta has secured us. So, well, Jed, you know what would be funny is because he's been tied to the White Sox, because the former White Sox who won the World Series 05, is it
Taguchi? No, who was it?
Yeah, Taguchi. I think it was Taguchi.
Yeah, Taguchi.
Taguchi. He's familiar with him. If the White Sox came out of nowhere and sniped him, I'd laugh my ass off. That would be truly a miracle of miracles right now. But
honestly, it would be kind of an awesome move for the White Sox, because then they could just probably turn around and trade him and get a ton of prospects for him. Like, it would be an awesome acquisition, but I'm sure that they would just want to keep him. But yeah,
I do like this idea from Robert James too. They do have a lot of 7th, 8th, 9 starters this year that they could go to, and then I think having a trade idea like that would, for even for like a backup infielder. I mean, the Tigers really don't. I mean, Gage Workman is technically a Cub right now, so you don't really, your options down in the minors are even limited. So I do like. that's a sports fan. I do like that idea here. He said that Jose
Leclerc.
yeah, who was a former Ranger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a guy who he's a good back end bullpen arm. His closed before, strikes out a decent amount of people. His walks are a little bit high, but nothing crazy for a reliever. I wouldn't mind him at all. But yeah, again, it really the reliever market seems like it's waiting on Tanner Scott, right?
Yeah.
And then there's all these like roadblocks that are keeping everything from happening.
I'll take that 12.9K per 9. Thank you very much.
Yeah, to Robert's point though, and we've discussed this a bunch. Like, they do have a seeming surplus of arms, and they could use that to get a piece that they want for sure. But it really feels like they want and they are eager to have MLB level pitchers in Toledo for whenever they need them, because that pitchers get hurt all the time, and it's nice to have a guy who's a quality, capable back end starter down in the minors. Like, none of us came into last year thinking Brian Sammons was going to come up and pitch meaningful innings, and it happens every year basically. So I think that they, if somebody makes them an interesting offer that helps the team, I think that they trade some of those guys. But I don't know if they're going to try to consolidate, as it were, to streamline it and give them a permanent top 5 in the rotation.
Well, yeah, because the only way you're going to get, I think the only way you get really something that you really want out of that is if another team really likes one of those guys. Like, another team is really going to want one of those guys. I'm not saying that some of them don't have value. That's not fair. But like, yeah, I don't think somebody's going to be knocking down your door for Ty Madden right now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the player, like the biggest swing player in the rotation is Reese Olson, right? Like, he's young enough that they could, if they really like him, they could extend him. Because that's the way you do it, right? With pitchers, you're not gonna, like, the Tigers should have extended Skubal before 2024. That's what you extend him to 5-6 years or whatever. But he's also like, there's enough upside there to maybe trade him for a legit piece to some team. But you might not want to move him. I don't know. Like, I think he would be a more intriguing trade chip than, like you said, Ty Madden or Montero or something like that. But I don't think they'd be compelled to move him either. They're kind of counting on him this year.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at the rotation, the projected rotation, which we'll start working on projected rotations here in the next couple of weeks over Tiger Monthly Report, is even at Double A right now, you have some uncertainty of guys that could make the next move to Toledo and above. If you really think about it in the grand scheme of things, is Troy Melton going to be a call up in 2025? No, I don't think, unless he takes a big, I don't. I think it's possible, but I mean, he did a lot of home runs last year, Chris, and that's where that's why I get paused a little bit too. But I just don't see. Erie's rotation last year was a lot of guys who, it was just like a piecemeal rotation, if you will, outside of Jobe, and not to say there wasn't any really good arms or anything like that. I just don't see. I don't know. As of right now, I just don't see an arm that's projected for Toledo to be at Erie, in Toledo, in Detroit by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely. But like you said, development, sometimes players take big developmental leaps, right? Yeah. Like, it happens. It's usually in the younger players. Like, I was talking about Jackson Jobe the other day, just the leap he made from that first season in Lakeland to that, his comeback the next year when he was in West Michigan and he's striking out everybody and walking nobody. He had fixed his fastball, his changeup got better, his slider got better, he's throwing more strikes. It's like, sometimes guys can make that huge leap, but there's nobody that I would project. Like you said, like Melton would probably be the best candidate, but I wouldn't project that. I think he's probably going to spend most of his year, and he may head back to Erie to start the year. Honestly, they may kind of do what they did with Madden.
Yeah, it would be well fitting for him. And I like this question here from Jed: get a veteran catcher or roll with Dingler? And that's a valid question, because I mean, do you go ahead and give a guy who's got just about a month worth of MLB at bats, just over a month, as your backup catcher and let him figure things out, or do you get a veteran catcher? And personally, I'd rather see Dingler try to figure things out a little bit, and then maybe have somebody ready in Toledo or something along those lines. because I think the Tigers, in terms of their catcher depth this year, they took a hit. I think they were expecting the guy they got from the Hicks to be in Toledo, and he's not. I mean, I think the Marlins are going to keep him because Marlins are going to spend jack squat. They haven't spent any. It's so weird when you see a team that hasn't spent anything like that. Could Severin be a backup possibility?
Yeah, he's got MLB time. Yeah. It's a Dustin Garneau situation. I think that they will. We mentioned like they're completely fine with Dingler as a game caller and as a receiver. Like the defensive aspect of it, they love. So, and that's he's going to be their backup catcher for the most part. It's not going to be a real tandem at first, at least. So I don't think they're too worried there. Now, if he falls flat on his face, Parker Meadows style, then they may send him back down for a while and bring up a Servant or whatever. But yeah, I think they're probably content with what they have right now. They may bring in another veteran catcher in spring training.
Yeah,
teams tend to do that, right? Like I'm for blanking on the names of the guys last year, but you can never have too many catchers either.
If Jake Miller started in the AL1, I mean, look, Jake Miller, he moved up 3 levels last year. Jake Miller, so I mean, might as well put Gabriel Reyes in that conversation too. Steven Scott, I think Josh says Steven Scott. If Steven Scott was in consideration, we got at least some sort of time last year, but I think he's just cool with being Toledo with that. So we got a couple more questions here. Sports fan, the guys that guess how many more major league signings do the Tigers make and what positions? I'm gonna say I'll look. I think they'll get maybe like an infielder with an option to go to the minor leaguers to the minor leagues, a third baseman, and I really think they'll get a reliever. Maybe two relievers.
Yeah, I think they're getting at least one more starting pitcher.
All right, I like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll go too. I think they're going to get a bat and a reliever.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Ideally, a decent chunk of change on both of those guys.
See here. We have another question from Nick. If Scott did trade for a start instead of signing one free agent, what do you think the most expendable guys in our minor leagues could have true value right now? Well, I mean, that's a very valid question. That's a very good question too. If you look at guys in the minor leagues right now that with actual value, if they could trade for major league players, something like Hyu Lee, which I don't think they would do anyway because they really like Hyu Lee a lot. But he represents a guy. You look at his numbers last year. Here's a guy who just turned 21. It was, I think, 3 years younger than the average in Double-A in the Eastern League, and he put the Seawolves on his back the first half of the season. He had very similar numbers to Cole Keith when he spent the season in Toledo or in Erie before he got called to Toledo. Just a few more home runs off, and he's a guy who could play either second or third. That guy brings you tremendous value, but you're not also. But then after that, you're not going to trade your Max Clarks or your Kevin McGonagals or Jose Briseño would come in also mine too. But I don't see them after the year Briseño had. I don't see that happening either. But those are guys that will come in mind.
Yeah, I thought of Leon Young first because there's second baseman and McGonagall's coming up. And I think they like McGonagall a lot. I think. And that was the one other I forgot. The one other question I wanted to ask Scott Harris was about when it's time to stop being rational and kind of go for it. And I was going to reference the Gleyber Torres trade way back in the day with the Cubs that got them Aroldis Chapman, which was kind of the final piece to them winning the championship. And at that time, Torres came into that season as like a top 100 prospect. And at the time of the trade, he was a top 20 prospect in all of baseball, a shortstop. Like, who knows? Maybe that same sort of thing happens with the Tigers this year. And at the trade deadline, Bryce Rayner, right? He's a top 100 prospect right now. Maybe he's having an awesome first season or just a good first season in pro ball and showing signs. He's an A-ball though, right? And you're trying to win a championship right now. That's a guy, potential cornerstone bat that you could trade for a huge piece, I think. And that I would also, maybe that coincides with Sweeney looking like a legit big league shortstop, like for, half of the season, right? There are valuable chips down there. It's tough to know, which ones are going to be expendable.
Yeah, and they also have a lot of reliever arms too that other teams like. Case in point, the Jack Anderson being drafted by Boston. There's another pitcher too. They lost
They lost Iker Weezy and
Yeah,
Cedric
Iker.
Franco.
Yeah, guys that
Those
they're
names.
yeah, those are names, but those are names that some other team saw something with them and going, hey, we can do something like this. And the Tigers have a couple of those guys down there. I mean, one of the questions that we were joking around about, too. I mean, even like, Frank Bear,
Fran Gerber Montilla,
yeah, Montilla is a guy too who just came out kind of, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but he is a guy who could have some potential. He's a guy that a team might look at and go, like Tampa with Willie Adames, and go, oh, yeah, we can make something out of that, because based off some of his numbers he did last year. So
yeah, and I know you'll see people like Jose Dixon's a shortstop who had a good DSL. You'll see him on top 30 lists places. I know JJ Cooper from Baseball America thinks the Tigers are absolutely loaded at catcher now with Dingler, with Lorenzo. He still considers Briseño a catcher, and they've got Enrique Jimenez, who was in rookie ball, and they got Steven Madero, who was in the DSL. So, yeah, and we've seen the Dodgers pretty consistently every trade deadline. They're like, all right, we're going to develop a catcher and we're going to move them, because teams always want catchers. So that could be a source of a trade too.
Yeah, and the Tigers picked up a guy in the Rule 5 draft by the name for the Mets, guy, a light hitting guy,
Infielder, right?
Infielder in Junior Tillian. But there's been some hype that he's actually a stinky good pickup for the Tigers.
Oh, nice.
So that's a guy who is a right-handed bat. Again, doesn't hit for a lot of power just based off his numbers, but he does fill in a significant gap for another infielder in case if McGonigal doesn't come back all the way healthy. So that's a possibility. I don't say it's a trade possibility. What I'm just saying is it's a name to look out for early on in when prospects or when the minor league season gets underway, as a guy who probably will see more at bats. But yeah, catcher wise too. I mean, for JJ Cooper to say that, that's just saying something, because Briseño's not coming back as a catcher. We know that. I mean,
I really doubt it. Now Harris did say, that he transformed his body and was moving better in the box. So maybe they think that that'll translate to the behind the plate. But we've talked about it a bunch. Like, I just think that there's so much more work to be done on defense than there is with the bat, that you're just kind of stalling his development at that point. Although it would be awesome to have a guy who can hit like that playing catcher. It's just like, what do you want to do? He's young enough that you can kind of spend time doing that, but he's also going to be Rule 5 eligible, I think. Is he eligible next year or the year after? I'm not sure.
I believe it is the year after. Let me double check. I'm gonna triple check that right now.
I'm checking too. It's 26. So after this season, after next season. So
yeah,
if you want to spend 2 years trying to make him catch, and then I don't know, whatever. We'll see what happens next year. It wouldn't shock me if they have him catch, but I think they shouldn't.
Yeah, I forgot about Jay Markle mentioned Gabriel Rosado.
Yeah, and Brady Trachonic, who has not played yet.
Yeah,
the JUCO kid that they gave an overslot deal the year before. So yeah, they have some backstops in the system. It's they could trade from that, or they could keep them because they're important.
Yeah, I did like what he said about Carson Rucker too. Was that off the record he was saying, or was that during?
Yes. Yeah, it was. But it wasn't anything like crazy. They just, we asked Scott Harris not off the record, just not on the interview. Like, he didn't say anything bad or whatever. We just asked him about some players that maybe weren't getting enough publicity, and he mentioned Carson Rucker as one of them.
Yeah, you can find that on an interview series too over at Tiger Minor Report, the YouTube channel, on that. So under player interviews. So thank you again for checking us out tonight over at Motor City Metrics. So what's up?
Did you want to touch on your resolutions at all, or no?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Let's touch on our New Year's resolutions. So, Mike, what do you have for your New Year's resolutions?
What I came up with is something that I've never really come out and said that I've absolutely loved the idea of signing Bregman, but the reason for that is because of what happened in my past and what happened in the Tigers' past. So my New Year's resolution is to not let the past cloud my judgment of moves that will be coming in the future. I can't let the ghost of Javi Baez's contract and Jordan Zimmerman's contract be something that scares me from trying to do it again, because that's, if they're going to spend money, they got to try to do it again. You know, they got to try to give a contract that could end up being poor at the end. And I think I need to be okay with that. So, because the longer free agency goes on, at the beginning, I was like, I'm not really sure if I want Bregman. Like, I don't want those last couple of years. Now, the longer we go into free agency, the more I'm thinking, oh my God, if they don't get Bregman, I don't even know how I'm going to feel about this free agent class for the Tigers. So that is what I'm going to spend this year doing. And Javi Baez, you can't hurt me anymore. Well, he's got 2 more years, but I'm not going to let him hurt me anymore.
Yeah, that's good. I think last year my resolution was to spend more time with my son. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And kind of embrace the fact that he still likes me a little bit, and it's only another year or 2 of that before I ruined his life constantly. This year, you know, not to keep coming back to the Harris interview, but a lot of people reached out afterward to, you know, congratulate and stuff and like that. And one thing I've never been good at, and I want to get better at, is that sort of networking aspect and telling people I appreciate them and calling friends and things like that. I'm just bad at it, and I like it. I just don't do it. And so I'm going to resolve this year to, like, you know, call some buddies more often, slide into some people's DMs to tell them I appreciate their work, things like that, because it does. I think it helps, and I need to be better at it.
Awesome. For me, working on saying players' names correctly and better. I know that it's for people who've listened to the show or have listened to us for a long time. People know it's just kind of a running thing because my brain works 1,000 miles per hour. There's no excuse. I'll
make 1,000 excuses for you, but it's fine. I think it's endearing at this point.
Roger, also, like, it's, you guys, everybody listening, you have to know, like, off air, Roger can say about half these names. He's totally fine with it. It's just, there's something about being in front of the microphone. I don't know, man. It's I think that's only it, because we'll talk about players, and I feel like you have way fewer issues outside of the microphone, you know?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Did you ever see that movie, The King's Speech?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. Like when I asked you to name the 4 catchers from the 1996 Tigers, you had no problem naming like 8 people, right? It's like, I don't know what it is. If you just have to, like, if you're confronted with it, and you don't think about it, it's there. So, but I don't think it's an issue at all. Like I said, I think it's fun.
Yeah, I
enjoy butting in anyway.
I just want to make sure I get better at it, because it's one of those things that I've always tried to take pride on. I was taking speech classes early on in my youth because I had stuttering problems, and so it's like something I'm like the late Bill Walton did after he retired. That was something he wanted to become a better broadcaster, and so for me, that's the same thing.
Slow down, big man.
Slow down, big man.
Well, and you growing up in a household where your parents spoke Spanish for the most part, right? And there's some, it's you know, it's got to be a little bit difficult. So,
speaking of Spanish, that's another thing too. My brother, I was talking about this with who was I talking about this with? Oh, it was my older brother, that we don't talk enough Spanish to each other. And I can speak Spanish. I understand it. I don't do it with a lot of player interviews, but because a lot of these players are also trying to speak English. So, but I can understand players who speak Spanish, and I speak a little bit, but I don't speak with enough confidence. But I would love to do one interview this year completely in Spanish. Like we've done, the last one I did was with Brian Pena a couple years back. So I'd love to do that. That'd be awesome. And then lastly is to lose weight. Or no, I have one more after this. Lose weight. I've already lost 22 pounds this offseason.
Nice.
So it's still, I got still some ways to go before spring training, before my best shape of my life.
There you go.
¿Cómo estás? Bien, mira, la cosa es que, mira, yo puedo hablar poquito, que a veces que tengo pena hablar mucho más. There you go. So if you understand that, then you understood perfectly what I was trying to say.
Como estoy.
Yeah, so, and lastly, the last thing is for our website to be more like, so this year, one of the resolutions is that
there's one for me too. Yeah.
Bonus content, consistency with content. And now that we're going to be going in a couple weeks here, transitioning to a paid model where we're going to see stuff behind the paywall and all that, so we can deliver content consistently and be out there more. That way we can make money and continue to do this as not just as a passion, but as a profession. we'll be more consistent with content, daily content. It's just gonna be a thing. And
Yeah, that's a resolution I would like to start small, but I'd like to get like 100 subs.
Yeah. Our goal is we have subs goals and all that stuff. But like I said, we're gonna roll that out here the next few weeks or so. Fasted on weekends for 4 months, and that did it. Player time, that's actually a pretty good idea too. What I've been doing really is just been, I don't work out every day. I work out 4 or 5 days a week. And what I've been doing is been cutting back my sugar intake. And that's been the biggest thing. And I'm not gonna lie, and something I never told anybody on this, but I do overeat. I stress eat, and I actually joined like an overeaters thing.
Oh,
So
nice.
like it's a thing where it's like an overeaters club kind of thing, and that's gonna start in the next couple of weeks or so. And that like I did one session already and talked to the males who suffer from the same thing. Because I drink, I don't drink that much, but when I get stressed out, I overeat. And that's just something I don't try not to do that anymore. So, bring myself a little bit of vulnerability there, but
it's tough, man. Sugar is more addictive than just about anything I've ever tried.
yeah.
And I've tried some things. It's hard to kick. Like if you go like 3-4 days without eating sugar, you start craving pretty hard. But if you can make it like a week, you're good. But yeah, it's hard out here. I did a fasting thing for a while. I was going through Hungry Mondays, I called them. I just wouldn't eat on Mondays. And I made it about a month before I was like, can't do it. But so I give credit to anybody who can fast for that long and it have results.
Yeah. And have the will to do it consistently.
I am totally fine with being a little chubby. I eat whatever I want. I drink whatever I want right now.
You're still young, you monster.
I mean, I'm in my mid 30s. You say I'm young, but that
young enough.
But I don't know. I like being able to eat whatever I want, but I'm starting to get to the point where I can't. And I really had a point to this, but I'm pulling a Chris, and I completely just lost my train of thought.
Well, I can tell you're young. I went to my doctor's appointment just a week ago, and they're getting me all set up for my first colonoscopy. So
I've had 4 colonoscopies.
Really? Nothing makes you feel old like that. But
wow.
Yes, I've had 4. So I can give you some tips. I've been through that. I'm an expert on those.
All right, yeah, maybe.
Well, no,
maybe off air.
Yeah, maybe off air. But yeah, I'm also.
We don't want to be talking about DD Mega Doo-Doo.
Yeah. We definitely don't want to be talking about
ED Mega Doo-Doo.
No, we don't want to be talking about that at all.
So.
No, I mean, not to mention colon cancer runs in my family. Okay, we're not gonna end it. Let's end the podcast on a positive note. But whatever your news, make sure they do not. Yeah, make sure they do not go out. Absolutely, that is.
I don't think they do them where you don't. I've never heard of that. That sounds.
Yeah, no. I was knocked out.
Yeah, no, and yeah, and like you said, everybody wants to tell us their New Year's resolution. That's cool. And when I was saying I want to reach out to other people, if anybody wants to reach out to me, my DMs are open on Twitter. Message me on Blue Sky or whatever. I'm happy to talk to anybody about baseball. So
yeah, same here. I might not get back to you right away, but follow us on Twitter at Rajcast Baseball, or you can DM us at the Tigers ML Report, or email us. You know what's funny? I put the email out there all the time, and it doesn't realize we don't get a lot of email. We do get some emails, but we don't really. It's not very often. But if you want to email us, there it is, tigersmlreport@gmail.com. Or just like I said, one of the show sites or what have you. Plenty of ways to get a hold of us, talk baseball. We're out of time. Thank you so much for listening, and let's fist one.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh man.
That's a real dog.
ED Mega Doo-Doo.
All right,
that's a crappy way to end things, huh?
Stay.
Oh God!
All right, stay classy, everybody.
All right. Why don't you let us know in a timely way you're on? Stan, we're on every Thursday at 9:00. It doesn't change. In the off season, like I said, I said this in the beginning of the year, the off season. Off season, there may be some Thursdays, but every every Monday night we do the minor league podcast. Every Thursday, 9:00, like clockwork on here. So it's for people that are. There's a lot of people, and there's another thing I discovered, by the way, before we get out of here. 70% of our YouTube subscribers on Tiger Minor League Report are not subscribed.
All right.
So please subscribe to the Tiger Minor League Report channel. It takes 2 seconds to subscribe. You get all notifications when new shows. Same thing with Motor City Metrics, but 70%, was an astonishing number. But I will, you know what? It was funny because like I don't like those YouTube thumbnails where people are doing like this face or some of the things they tell you to do. Like the YouTube's always telling you to nag people to subscribe and all that. Well, yeah, we'll have to start doing that more because I don't like bothering people. So either way, regardless, please subscribe to subscribe to both channels. Check us out. Check out Chris's article on Alex Bregman at TigersMLReport.com. And YouTube, Stan, I'm sorry. It should be. I put the link on for everybody to go on live at 9:00. So I don't tell you, man. I'm sorry. I really don't. But anyway, regardless of that, thank you so much for listening. And if, like I said, if anything happens breaking wise, you guys know we'll be out there. We'll talk to you next week. Otherwise, we'll talk to you next week. Have a good night, everybody.